Okay, hi everyone. I'll get us started. So my name is Victoria and I'm the Communication Design and Event Assistant here with FCAT. And you might know me by now if you've come to a few of the workshops. This is actually the last one I'll be hosting as my co-op is finishing up. So thanks for coming today. The session is being recorded. Like I said, if anyone missed it or you want to review a part, you'll get to watch it on YouTube later. If you'd like to put your cameras on, you can do that, but it's not required. And I'd like to start us off with a land acknowledgement. As I study and work in Burnaby, which is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. I also wanted to mention SCOTN, which is the Indigenous Film Festival held in FCAT, which I had an opportunity to attend just the other week, and I'd really recommend it checking out in the future because you could also be part of the class, which basically plans the film festival, where you might have a chance to watch it as well. So it showcases films by Indigenous creators, and this is a great way to engage in these stories and learn something about these different and many Indigenous cultures, which I think is a very important piece of reconciliation. So I can pop that in the chat also if you'd like to check it out. And then getting to the workshop, we have a little schedule here today. So you can see we'll be starting it off with the phase 1 Photoshop best practices and some poster recreation. And then we'll have a 5-minute break so you can get up, grab some water, go to the washroom, whatever. And then we'll have phase 2, which is going to go over some touch-ups and photo editing. And then around 4:30, we'll finish up and have final questions. And so, of course, I'm happy to introduce you guys to James, who will be teaching the workshop. James is a senior FCAT student concentrating in design as a UX/UI designer, and he's currently in co-op as a design coordinator for a tech and design consultancy company. He's also the director of communications for IATSU. And then lastly, I'll also be taking attendance as this workshop counts for credit on your co-curricular record. So please just make sure that your Zoom name matches the name that you used to register. So if you'd like, you can take a moment to change it just so I make sure I check you off. And yeah, I think that's everything. I think if you have any questions throughout it, feel free to drop it in the chat because I'll be monitoring that and then I can pass those questions off to James. So yes, now I'll pass it off to him to get started.
Cool. Thanks, Victoria. Yeah, it's nice meeting everyone. I was just telling Victoria there's like a storm going on. So I apologize if like I randomly cut off. That's probably because the electricity went out or something. But yeah, so let's get started. In terms of what we'll be doing today, so we'll be creating this poster that I've made for this specific workshop today. And so this is the first phase. The second phase we'll be working on touch-ups and editing, specifically changing and adjusting colors and brightness in existing images. So this is kind of what we'll be looking at today. So if you're on Photoshop right now, you can go ahead and click File at the top, clicking New. And you'll get all these templates that are already assigned. But normally, I find it more often than not, you'll be working with Letter or WebLarge. These two scale really well in most cases, in most projects. So in this case, we'll be using Letter. And always name your files, because if you don't, you'll just get lost in all the files that you made. So in this case, let's name it FCAT Workshop PS for Photoshop. You can keep all the settings the same here. I would recommend either going high resolution, so 300 or 72. The reason why is because if you set it to 300, your file that you're working with might be a bit too big, especially when you export it. So I would go with a good 72. And once you're there, you can go ahead and create. And then now you can see this nice blank white artboard. So this is where you'll be working with all your designs. Any edits that you made will be specifically on this artboard. And what I like to do is, let me just move this here. Oops. Is having a point of reference open. If you're working with Photoshop, it's always a good idea to have some point of reference. So I would just either open up the image and then have a separate window. In this case, it's our demo here as our point of reference. So we'll get started with this blank canvas first. The first thing I normally do is getting the background right. As you can see, it's kind of like this dark gradient background. Don't worry about the gradient too much. We'll work on the gradient effect later, but let's get a dark layer in there. So on your left-hand side of Photoshop, you'll see all these tools. And I know it's a bit overwhelming to see all these tools, but Photoshop does a really good job of, if you hover your mouse over one of the tools, you'll see the animation, like a preview, what you can do with it. What we want to go ahead and do is hover over this paint bucket tool and then left clicking it. And once you've selected it, you can change the color. I have a color menu here on the side where I can adjust the color. In this case, we'll set it to black. And once you've set the color that you're comfortable with, in this case, we're using black, you can left click your artboard and then literally like a paint bucket, you're just like splashing it on the canvas. So boom, you got a nice background that you can work with now. And from then on, again, using our point of reference, where we need like these two large texts. We got the P and the S. Going over to our artboard. Again, on the left-hand side here, you want to make your way to this like T icon for text. When you're there, you can select it and click it. And then on your artboard, you can left click it anywhere. And you'll get a preview of the text that you'll be working with. In this case, let's just do P, right? Because we're trying to recreate that poster. If you notice, you don't really see anything right now. It's because I set the font color to black. At the top of your toolbar, this is where you can change the font, the thickness, the size, and the color. And what you want to do is click this block of color here. Right now it's black. We want to change it to white for now. Let's just change it to white. And having that layer selected, let's change at the top, let's change the size. So if you notice, it's maximum 72, but you can make it even larger. So if you want to make it even larger than 72, there's a little icon here. You hold left click and you drag it to the right. And then you could see it's just being scaled. You get pretty big. I don't know like the maximum, but if you want, you can make it even larger. But let's do like 560. Yeah. And if you want it even more precise, you could just click the actual number and just do like 560 and then press enter. And make sure you confirm the changes you've made. There's a little checkbox here. Make sure you click that or else it won't make the changes that you've done. So boom. You're probably wondering like, how do I move this text? If you go over to the tool panel again, at the very top, there's a tool called Move Tool. Once you select that, you click your layer, your object, and then you can move it around, holding left click. So boom, now we got the P all in place. I'm a bit like of a OCD, so I gotta make sure everything looks the same. Uh, so that, yeah, that looks good. Actually, I'm gonna make this larger. So again, you could just double click the actual number and then just put any amount. So 600. No, 660. Oops. Okay, that's much better. And then confirming. And then you can adjust it and move it wherever you like. And yeah. Um, so now we have to work with the S text layer. Of course, you could just go ahead and click the text tool and then doing everything again. But something that will save you a lot of time in any situation is when you want to make a similar like copy, what you can do is just click that layer, holding Control and then Control C. That copies that layer, and then you could do Control V. On Mac OS, it's Command C to copy and then Command V to paste. So now I have the exact same duplicate, but of course we don't need another duplicate. We want the S. So you can double click that layer until it's all highlighted and then just typing S. That's lowercase. Okay, capital S. Boom. Now you have these two nice layers, and I'll position the S just like we have on the demo. So see, it's coming together already. This is looking good. And again, we have that FCAT Photoshop Workshop text. We'll go ahead and selecting the text tool, clicking anywhere in the artboard, doesn't really matter, and then begin to type. But if you notice, it has the same size as we previously set it to. We don't want that because obviously it's a smaller font. So what we'll do is cancel, and we'll work in a new layer. So this is something that is important to know. So Photoshop uses layers when you're working on your artboard. It just means that the S the S layer here is above the P. So you're going to be working from top to bottom. So for example, like let's say I import an image on top of this artboard. That image will be placed above the two layers that we have. So you always have to consider that you're working from top to bottom. And for the most part, most design applications, they follow a similar rule where you'll be working from the top to bottom. So if you click the plus icon here, that essentially lets you create a new layer. And once we have the new layer selected, go to your tool, your text tool at the left hand side. And then, of course, we don't want, oh, why is it like that? Okay, let's do that again. Oops. Sorry, technical difficulties, everyone. Layer. Okay, so again, because we're trying to make a new text, Photoshop automatically just uses the previous font size that you've used before, which is in this case 660. We don't want 660. We want something a lot smaller. Let's just do 30. And with 30, we can now go ahead and create that FCAT Photoshop drop. And boom. So we'll place this guy in the middle of the two letters that we've made. Just like that. So it looks like that. Cool. And yeah, once you're there, you notice that in our demo image here, we have all these shapes. Now we're gonna move ahead and start using the shape tool. So on the left side, you have this rectangle shape tool. You left click it and you make sure that you select the rectangle tool. So Photoshop has sub tools that you can use. So if you right click this rectangle tool, you can see that you can create ellipse, triangle, polygon, line, So just making sure that you select rectangle and not the other tools. Once you're there, we're gonna go ahead and create the rectangle. So you hold left click, you drag out until you see that blue outline um, creates the shape that you like. So in this case, that looks cool. And then once you've created that shape, make your way to this side of the tool panel. Mine automatically sets to have a stroke, so that like black outline. I don't know why it keeps doing that. So we don't want that. So in this case, if you go to stroke, there's a little icon here that lets you basically set the stroke to be transparent, so it's off. Make sure you click that if yours does have a stroke. And we'll go ahead and at the very top, you have fill. Fill has right now has like this gradient. We don't want this gradient as well. We'll apply the gradient later. So we'll do again no color, and we'll set it to white. And then we should be good. But if you notice, mine has like these rounded edges. We don't want that. So again, on this side of the panel, at the very bottom here, you can see like these numbers. Just set them to 0, and then you could see that these rounded corners are now back to straight edges. So that's what we want to do right now. Now we have our first block. And again, if you want to move and manipulate anything on your artboard, it's at the very top here, you have your move tool. Yeah, so if you notice that in our demo, we have a bunch of rectangles. So again, to make everyone's life easier, just Control C and then Control V. For macOS, Command C and Command V. And then we'll position the rectangles on top of each other. And we're just gonna keep doing that until the rectangle hits the same alignment as that text that we've made. I actually don't know if you guys can see my mouse or not. I have no idea.
Yeah, we
So
can
if
see like your cursor. So
okay, cool. Because I'm like sometimes circling stuff in my mouse just to emphasize stuff. But
yeah,
okay, that's
it
good to
works.
know. Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, it looks to be pretty much aligned. I know we don't have that much rectangles, but if you're ever making design work, it's never gonna be like one for one to whatever like you want to design it. You just go with the flow, and if it looks good, it looks good. So we have our rectangles now. Something to note. This is gonna save everyone. This is gonna make everyone's life easier. Work in groups. By that I mean you can see our layer tab here. There's a bunch of rectangles, like rectangle 1, rectangle 1, and if you're ever working with a team or anything like that, and they look at your file, it might get pretty messy, and it's pretty hard to know like what exactly you're trying to do. You can't really get a good sense of what's happening on the layer tool. But what you can do is select the most top layer of the rectangle. While holding shift, you then select the bottom rectangle, so like the last rectangle. And then it'll highlight all the rectangles that you've selected. And then what you want to do is in this icon, you see this little folder icon. You click on that, and then it'll group all those rectangles we've made. And then of course you want to always have good naming convention. So rectangle layer. If you're curious, like if it actually worked, like if all those rectangles were grouped, there's a little eye icon here that lets you turn the layer on and off. So right now it's off, so you can't see the layer, and then I click it back in, and now it's on. So yeah, make sure you guys use groups, because like it can get pretty messy. You're just gonna be like having like a billion layers, and you're like scrolling. It can get pretty crazy. So now that we have all the rectangles in place, we'll go ahead and create this part right here, hosted on Zoom, Tuesday, 3 p.m., and then presented by me. We'll go ahead and again make sure we create a new layer, and then we'll go ahead and select the text tool. Then we'll do posted on Zoom. Uh, 12 p.m. It's not going to be one for one because yeah, like yeah, by yeah, cool. And then once you're done, you're good with the edits. You make sure you confirm it, and then yeah, so just drag it here. But you notice that it's too large. Again, we're gonna adjust the size. We'll go ahead and at the top toolbar here, we'll make it like 24. Okay, cool. 24 is good. And if you don't want it have that, if you don't want the font to have that bold thickness to it, you could just change it up here and then click regular. And then we'll save those changes. Boom. So now it looks pretty good. Everything looks aligned. Um, so yeah, once you have like the general framework, like the wireframes and stuff, then you could start playing with colors. And it really depends on your workflow. I'm kind of all over the place. So if I were doing this for an actual project, I would play around with the colors immediately. But generally, I would say if you want to keep things organized, you kind of need to know where things would go in terms of design. Like you could put shapes here, maybe that looks good. But since we have this like um this Swiss design look, this is kind of the framework that we're gonna choose to have. And okay, so we're gonna go ahead and apply the colors. So selecting on your layer tab here, make sure you left click and select the P layer. Double click the P layer, and then we're gonna go ahead and you can see just above the layer tool, there's an area called color that will change the color of this layer that we selected. So in this case, I think it was like a purple, right? Is it? It was like a pink. Oh, okay. Yeah, so let's just change it to the proper color. Cool. And then we'll do the same for the S. And I think it was like a sky blue. So making sure you double click that layer until everything's highlighted. And you go ahead and click color. And actually, let me just explain this real quick. So I know this looks a bit confusing if you're using Photoshop for the first time. And at any moment, if you guys are genuinely confused, just reach out in the chat and then Victoria can just let me know during the workshop. But let me explain this tool real quick. Basically, you have all the color palettes all here. You can see that right now I'm holding my left mouse and dragging these arrows like up and down, and then they'll give you like a range of colors that you can work with. Since we want the S to be a blue, I'm gonna hover over the blue area and then like just give it that color that we're looking for. Okay, cool. Now, in the future, if you guys know the exact color that you need, there's the hex code here. Um, there's some websites like Adobe has a website like Adobe Color Swatch or something. They'll give you the exact code, like this hashtag, and you could just literally paste it here and it'll give you that exact color. So rather than like experimenting which colors works, if you know the color that you'll be working with, use this. But yeah, so once you have the color that you like, go ahead and press OK. And then, of course, you have to confirm the changes you made up here. Yeah, so as you can see, we're getting there. We have the colors on where we needed them to be. And you're probably wondering, okay, how do you get that gradient look on the rectangles? So that's a good question. We'll go ahead and create new layer right above the rectangle layer. So what I just did is I clicked the rectangle layer and then I click this plus icon, and then Photoshop will auto create a layer on top of the layer that you selected. It just does that by default. So making sure that layer you've selected is selected, is like highlighted. Now we'll go ahead and on your tool panel here, we'll go ahead and click the rectangle tool, and then holding left click on the artboard, it will highlight on top of the rectangles that we've made. And then it'll generate the color by default. And I'm gonna remove the stroke because we don't want that. And I'm gonna keep the gradients, but here is where the important part comes in. We're gonna have to change the color of the gradient. So how to do that is, if yours is set to default as a, let's say, like a full color, there's a little icon here that has that gradient look. You click that, and then you see this little like bar. Oh, sorry. So you see this little bar. This is where you'll be adjusting the gradient layer. So if you notice, ours has like this blue. It's kind of like this. How to describe it? It's like synthwave retro vibe. So we're gonna keep that here. To change each section of the gradient, you click the little block here. You double click it, and then you choose which color. Again, you can adjust the colors using the slider here, like I've mentioned before. So I forgot what color that we've used. So, okay, so it was blue on top and then like pink on the bottom. Okay. So we'll go ahead and click that. So pink at the bottom. So you can see that it has like this nice blend effect, starting from pink from the bottom and then slowly making its way to the top. And then at the top, the other side of the block, you can see this one I'm hovering right now. You want to double click that and then adjust the color there, so we'll get that nice blue effect. And that's pretty much it in terms of adjusting the gradient color. Now to actually change each individual block to have that gradient color, it's super simple. Make sure your layer selected. So I'll name this block like gradient layer, okay? And then over here, whoops, over here where you see normal, you left click it. It's a drop down menu, and it'll give you all these options that you can essentially blend that color into everything below it. So in this case, the rectangle layer. This is called blending, like blend mode in Photoshop. So what we'll do is essentially blend this specific layer into the layers below it. So let's do. I always forget which one to use, and there's never a right answer. It's kind of like down to preference. But I think for this case, we'll just use multiply. So as you can see, boom. So it's like that's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of how to actually blend the gradient layer that we've made. So we'll move ahead with that like shadow cast that we have going on here. I'll show you guys a really cool feature that I've been using a lot. It's super simple. So again, making sure you work on a new layer. Always create a new layer whenever you're working on Photoshop. Just because you don't want things overlapping. That would make your editing life a lot harder. So with the new layer that I've created, go back to the shape tool and then create an ellipse tool. So ellipse tool, you hold left click and shift, by the way. So you get the shape isn't like it's constrained by the actual shape. If not, right now I'm not holding shift, you'll get like this warped effect. So make sure you hold shift. Right now I'm holding shift, and then you'll get the actual proportions right. So yeah, just like the rectangle, it'll automatically fill the colors. I'm gonna remove stroke, and I'm gonna change the gradient to the same one that we made for the rectangle. So I'm gonna do that right now. Just quickly do that. So I'm gonna have one side, the bottom blue, and then the top will be okay. Yeah, that's fine. And then hitting OK. Once you're there, this is the cool part. So how would we get that nice cast, that nice like? Because right now you can see that our background is just black. Now to make it that nice blend shadow effect using this certain shape at the very top, is it on filter? So it's a very top menu. You go ahead and click blur or hover your mouse over blur, sorry, and then selecting Gaussian blur. And you'll get this pop up just to make like TLDR, just click rasterize. And then boom, you get like this super cool like blur effect. And then you could change the radius to anything you like. It's really down to preference. You notice that if I were to make the radius 0, nothing's changed. But you can see that the blur effect goes from the outside of the shape, slowly working inside, like pushing it in. And if you make it all the way like full blast, of course, like it's just gone. Like all the pixels are just like spread apart. So let's just do like or like 150. Let's get like a proper number there. Okay, 150. And making sure this the layer selected. Let's rename it actually. Let's do like blur layer. Okay, so you got your blur layer already. Now notice this blur layer is at the very top, and I don't know if you guys can see. Oh, by the way, if you want to zoom in on your upward, you hold Alt and then just like scroll mouse. On Mac OS, I don't know which one it is, but it's if Victoria can just drop like the key bindings in the chat, that'll just help everyone. Because on the top of my mind, I don't remember, and I have Mac. I just like I don't know why I just keep forgetting the bindings for Mac OS. But anyways, yeah, I'm just zooming in to see to show you guys like this blur layer is actually like manipulating some of the. You can see that it's like taking effect on the actual font, on the color of the text here, and we don't want that. So you simply just making sure your blur layers is selected. You drag, you hold left click, and you drag it all the way to the bottom, and then boom. Now it's not going to be affecting anything because it's at the very bottom layer. But if you notice, our blur gradient layer has like this shape here. It's because we didn't crop it right. So what you want to do is making sure that gradient layer is selected. You click Control T, and that will let you manipulate the shape. Control T is the transform tool, really useful just in certain cases, just like this. And then you'll see all these like edges with square blocks. This is how you control the shape of, in this case, the gradient layer. Now, if you were to, let's say, left click this part and then move it up and down, it'll just become larger or smaller. But in this case, we want to like basically shrink all corners, all sides, I mean. So you hold shift while holding left click and then bringing it up or down. And I'm bringing it down because I want it to like basically have that cutoff. Same with this side. So boom, then boom. Oh, okay. See, I didn't save. So, but just give me a sec. You can see that there's a corner, like this rounding corner effect. We don't want that. So, oh, okay. I think we've made changes to it, so we can actually. But I'll go ahead and just click transform, holding shift and just doing that should be fine. And then making sure that you've confirmed those changes you made. So if you scroll out, holding Alt, and then like moving your mouse scroll wheel up and down, it's fixed now. So it won't have that like weird effect, that like outline. And let's go back to the blur layer. Making sure that you have the move tool selected. Now you can move it. You can see. So let's just move it up. I think that's a good placement. And we'll do the same for the bottom. So let's make a new layer. We'll name it blur layer 2. Going over to the ellipse tool, selected, holding shift and then left clicking. We'll create the same thing. We'll remove the stroke and then we'll change the gradient color and we'll just make it the same. Double clicking that and then applying the actual like blur effect. And again, if you guys want to apply any effect in Photoshop, it's up here in filter. We want to use blur, specifically Gaussian blur on this layer. We have to rasterize it and then we have to set a radius for the blur effect to take form. And now that we have that layer selected, we'll go ahead and click the move tool once more, and then we'll like drag it down. And you can move it to like anywhere in the artboard you like, and then yeah, so that's coming together. And lastly, just to wrap things up on this phase, you can see this shadow effect. It really depends if you want the shadow or not. It's like a preference, but I like to add depth into my work sometimes. It gives it this nice look. It has like this tangible feel. So what we'll do is going over to the P layer, just down here, selecting it, of course. Hit Control C and then Control V, and then essentially you're pasting again. There's I want to explain something real quick. In Photoshop, there's a tool called like you can lock some of your layers. In this case, I would definitely lock the P and the S layer, the ones that you don't want to make changes to, because often more than not, you'll be working on layers on top of layers, and sometimes you might click the wrong layer. And then you'll like move it by accident. So it's just really annoying. What I would do is just anything that you don't want to manipulate, move, or do anything, just lock them. So this is the P layer that we've worked previously. There's a little icon that has that lock icon. Click that and then you'll lock that layer. So now like I can't move the P at all. It's moving the other layers, but like it's not moving the P. So now I can work easily with this P layer because I'm not going to be moving the other layer at all. So we'll change that color to, let's go black, because we want it to have that shadow effect, right? So we'll change it to black, and then right over here in that same menu, you'll see opacity. And opacity basically allows you to change the like if you could as you can see, it kind of has that like that see-through effect. Let's just change it to 15, and then we'll bring key layer, the shadow one. So I'll name this like P shadow. Okay, that makes more sense. We'll bring that layer below the other P layer, and then making sure that you have the move tool selected. You can move in and drag it so that it gives that nice shadow depth look. And yeah, you can see it's pretty much the same. We'll do the same for the S. So like, let's lock that S layer. Actually, no. Can I copy paste? Copy paste. Okay, see, you can't copy paste once it's locked. Okay, so let's unlock it first. And then copy paste. And then that original S layer, let's just lock it. And then we're going to change the color of the S shadow to black, just like the P layer. And then we'll change the opacity to 15. Let's just Let's just be consistent. Okay. No, 15. And then we'll take that S shadow layer below the S so that it's positioned right below that S that we previously made. And yeah, I think that looks cool. Yeah. And if you're content and you're pretty much good to go with the design that you're looking to work for, the last thing that you have to consider is exporting. So exporting is pretty straightforward in Photoshop. You want to go to File and then hovering over Export, you can click Export As, and then you'll get like these options. I would keep the settings the same, um, and it won't really affect like whatever you're seeing on screen. That should be the same setting. So just keeping everything the same. If you're working on PNG, making sure it's PNG. If the image, if you for whatever reason you want to export it as a JPEG, go to JPEG. So and then you hit export, and then you just save it to the file that you want to save it at. And yeah, that pretty much wraps up this phase. Again, we'll get a small break in, and if you guys have any questions, yeah, feel free to say in the chat. I don't have the chat open, so I don't know. So, but yeah, I'll just quickly go over what we'll do after break. It's we'll be working on manipulating and changing colors in an existing photo. So in my experience, I've used Photoshop a lot, mainly on touch-ups. So I do a lot of like photo shoots, editorial work. Um, so I'll be like changing somebody's shirt color sometimes, or just adjusting certain parts of the image, like highlights and contrast. So we'll cover that in the next phase. But yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna just add on to that, like, yeah, feel free to throw any questions in the chat, or if it's like kind of a long or confusing question, I know sometimes that happens, you can also like just raise your hand and then we can like call on you, so you can unmute and ask it if you prefer to do that. Um, but
mhm.
yeah, if not, like we'll be here, but we can take our 5 minute break. Maybe maybe we'll leave like these few minutes for some questions if anyone wants to stick around, and then we could go on a break 3:50 to 3:55,
Yeah,
and
that
yeah,
sounds good.
and then we'll continue with the next portion. So yeah, thanks. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions, or if you want, just you can
Yeah,
stand up
definitely.
or walk around.
Any questions? Good question. Because I've been in some of your guys' shoes where the instructor or workshop person might go cover things really quickly, and I'm just like, oh my god, like what's happening? I'm still
Yeah,
in step one. Like, how do I open a file?
yeah. It's like you get stuck on one thing and then you're like
Yeah,
behind. But it's okay, like no, it's not a class, so no like need
yeah.
to
This is
like be
super
freaking
chill.
out. It's
Like,
just chill.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's no
And I'll share the recording.
expectations. Like,
So
you
mhm.
guys can follow along for sure. And yeah, just any questions, good questions.
As long as you like pick up a few new things from this workshop, then we're happy. Mm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you guys should use blending a lot. Like, this has saved my life like a billion times. It has like some of the coolest looking like design work that you could possibly do if you just like spam blending like any of these things. So yeah, Photoshop um is used everywhere, so it's such a great skill to learn. And
We do have one question actually.
oh yeah, what's
So someone asked, can we please get a brief up of how to merge the rectangles with the gradient?
oh yeah, okay, yeah, I was curious if anyone's gonna ask that. Um so basically right now this gradient, oops, this gradient layer is placed on top of the rectangle layers that we've made. So I guess I'll just like recreate it. Maybe that's easier. So I'm just gonna delete the gradient layer and then let's just do it again. Because I think it's just better to just show everyone again. So if you guys are all familiar with how to create like a shape, that's pretty straightforward, I feel like. The tricky part is blending it, like you've mentioned. But once you do it once, it's pretty straightforward. Um, where is my... Oh, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know where my thing went. Oh, why is it up here? That's so weird. Anyways, so once you create the shape, that's like the easy part. Now what you want to do is, again, mine has a weird stroke. Just remove all the stuff that you don't want. In this case, I remove the stroke. And then the blending, I guess I'll ask this, which part of this process are you not sure about? Because I could like really talk about it more. Um, is it the like choosing the colors or is it like blending it?
I'll see if there's any updates. I
Okay,
think the original question was about how to merge the
just how to
rectangles.
merge.
Oh, and okay,
Okay,
about blending it, they said.
okay, okay. Then I'll just quickly go over how to go. So gradient, right? It's pretty straightforward. What we want to do is going over to the fill section here, and there's a little icon here that has that gradient look. Make sure you select that, and then if you scroll down a bit, you'll see this like color bar. The two rectangles basically represent each part of the gradient that you'll be adjusting. So let's do the left side first. I keep forgetting the colors, but let's just do blue on the left hand side. Double clicking this little rectangle and then changing it to the pink. And then now we get to the blending. Like I mentioned before, blending is such a powerful tool. Just makes your life easier. You just like play around with it and then you just see like what works. Once you're here, making sure that that layer that you want to blend is selected. Do you guys see this part here that says normal? It's next to opacity. If you have Photoshop open, if not, it's okay. I just want to make sure everyone can see like what I'm seeing. And if you guys do, you you click this section here. You can see a little drop down icon that basically indicates that it's going to show you additional stuff. By default, it's normal. You know, it's not doing anything. But if you slowly place your mouse over each one of these, you can see that it's blending. Or like it's like, yeah, it's just like fusing all the layers together. Um, so you more like sometimes you just have to play around with it to see what has the best blending, like the most like convincing looking. So let's just pick darker color. Yeah, this works a lot better. I don't know why I chose the other one before because like it had that weird effect. But so I chose darker color here, and you can see. So if I click Alt and then scroll mouse in, look like it's super clean. You don't even see like the gradient. Like you wouldn't even know that there was like a block over the rectangle. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, they said thank you so much.
Cool.
Let's,
Yeah, look, like if I go to P, I could, okay, not P, maybe S. Where's S? Because S is locked, you want to unlock it to make edits, right? So you go to S, and then if I go to the blending tool here, you can see, look, like it's slowly just changing color. It's blending between all. Yo, that looks cool. Wait, I'm gonna do that. Saturation. So I click saturation, blending, for the S layer, and then I'll do the same for P. So I'm gonna unlock P, and I'm gonna choose saturation. Yo, yeah, Victoria, I'll send you this instead for the marketing. But yeah, like I just showed everyone here in this workshop, like you just mess around with blending and you get like these amazing designs. People will think like, "Oh my God, you're like a design god," and you're like, "Yep, yes
And
I am."
sometimes you just have different versions of things. You like that's what I
Yeah.
find. It's like it's best like I can't. I'm so indecisive, so I'll just create multiple
Mhm.
versions and then stare at them like which one looks a little better at the end.
Oh my God, I'm like the same. I have different namings. It's like V1, V2, V3. Can get pretty crazy. But yeah, yeah, that's just a key takeaway out of the workshop. If all this is information overload, the just basically this part of the workshop, the key takeaway is like use blending.
Play around with blending.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, I think, well, that was a great question. So maybe we can break now, but then we'll come
Yeah,
back. We'll
sorry
have a
about that,
like
guys.
time at the end too, I think. This next portion, like James said, it's not going to be too long, not as long as this one. So we'll have like
Yeah,
time at the end
won't
for
take
like
too
more
long.
general questions. But yeah, I thought we could break now until just 4 o'clock to make it easy. So that sounds
Yeah,
good. And everyone can go and stand up or whatever. So yeah, thank you.
stretch and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, if you guys just want to chat too, that's fine too. I'm just gonna make sure everything works on my end.
Okay, I'll pause the recording for 5 minute break.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, so welcome back everyone. This is our next phase of the workshop. Again, like I've mentioned before, we'll be covering working with layers again. Something new that we'll be covering is working with mask, and I'll go over like exactly what that means and how we can use that to our advantage. Um, Most of the time, you'll be working with Photoshop mainly on existing images. So let's pretend like this image was given to you um, for, I don't know, for like a project or work, or your friend could have asked, "Oh, could you help me touch up some of the parts of the photos?" So this is where Photoshop comes in. It's such a powerful tool for you to just go in, edit some stuff, tweak some stuff, do some light touch up. So it's a really good tool for that. So today we'll do exactly that. This is the final edit of the image, just to give you guys like a visual representation. So, and this is just the original that I got from some stock image website. So, first and foremost, when you open up this image or any image for that fact, you'll have that one layer. It'll just be called background. In my case, I just changed to like layer 0. This is such a good habit of doing, but I would say, and I would recommend, by default, it's locked, by the way. So you would unlock this layer that you would work with, and then while that layer is highlighted, you click Control C, Control V, Command C, Command V on macOS, and then creating a duplicate layer. Because sometimes when you're working with, especially with editing existing photos, you don't want to make the mistake of working that one single layer and then messing up, and then like you could only undo so much until that Photoshop tells you straight up like, yeah, no, we can't keep undoing, like you messed up. So just working with like a layer copy, always a good idea. So with that first layer, layer 0, go ahead and lock that. We don't need to touch that. That's like our backup. And then we'll be working on layer 1. So with layer 1 selected, um, you guys can head over to the toolbar menu here, and then hovering over this tool called the object selection tool. When you click that, you can go ahead and hover over this person's hat. So we'll go ahead and left click that. And then you could see like this is what they call like a marquee, like a selection over the hat. This image works really well because sometimes Photoshop, it's like AI can't distinguish the corners, so it gets really messy. But for the sake of this workshop, I just chose this specific image because it's a lot easier for Photoshop to understand where the selection can be made. So you can see the outlines being made on the actual hat itself, which is what we want. So that's good. Once that's selected, we'll go ahead and click the group icon here, this little folder. And then we'll go ahead and at the same area, we'll go ahead and click add layer mask. Now, since I mentioned mask before, mask is basically like you'll be working with that specific selection that you've made. You basically select it previously and you'll be working and making edits to that specific layer. You can even see like it's kind of small, but you can see that only the hat is visible. Everything else is just black. So this is what we want. So once that is created, you'll see that it's you'll have this whole area highlighted. What you want to do now is over here, we'll create an adjustment layer, and then we'll click solid color. Now it's definitely up to your preference, but let's say we want to make the hat, let's say, I don't know, like blue, like a really strong blue for some reason. Don't worry about like why it looks really weird. We'll tweak the photo, just a bit. So, and at the same time, at the same adjustment layer icon, you want to go ahead and click brightness and contrast. Once you have these two adjustment layers all under this group layer, make sure you click the color adjustment layer, holding left click and then dragging it up until it's above the brightness contrast layer. Um, Once that's done, we can go ahead and tweak the color. And we're going to be using blending. Like I mentioned before, blending is so good for like 99% of the things you'll be working on Photoshop. So normal is just normal. Make your way to color. So now it's blending using the color blending tool. And now you can see that it's still that weird, super like really weird looking bright blue. What you can do to like offset that look is going over the opacity, and you'll be introduced with this like slider tool. You want to just drag it until it looks natural enough that like if you see this hat in person, it doesn't look weird. So like 50 looks good, right? 50 looks good. So once you're there, going over to the brightness contrast adjustment layer, clicking the sun icon here, make sure it's selected. You'll see like this square selection. Making sure that's selected, you can now adjust the brightness of that hat. See, you can see like if I really click it up, it's like super bright. And then you can like just, just making sure everything looks good. Um, Something to note is whenever you're working with Photoshop, you you want to understand where that image was taken, if that makes sense. So you can kind of get a good understanding that this image was taken in like a studio setting, great lighting. This kind of looks like one of those wallpapers in like those in-house studio photography shoots, which means the lighting is super good. So whenever you're adjusting photos like these, you want to match the source, right? So in this case, the hat wouldn't be like this dim. Actually, it would be like somewhere in the middle, but it's definitely like not this bright, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, you just want to match the same elements whenever you're making adjustments, and same with the contrast. So you can see it's really like contrasty. So we're gonna match the hat to have that same contrast look. Cool. And so that's for the hat.
Sorry to
Let's name this
interrupt.
group.
I was
Oh,
just
what's up?
gonna say, I don't know why on my end it sounds like your mic is distorting a little bit for,
Oh,
so I don't know if
oh,
you
yo,
could
thank you,
like,
thank you.
maybe you could try to like
Uh,
reconnect it or something. I don't know if it's on other people's ends, but I just noticed that
I could just
on
change.
time.
Is this better? It might pick up more background noise.
Yeah, it seems okay. But yeah, it's not doing that. It like does it for a few seconds and then it's okay. So I was like,
Oh, snap.
mm,
Okay. No, thank you for the heads up. Yeah, I wouldn't know. So is this like better? Because I just changed the.
I think it sounds okay. So yeah, I'll let you know if it does it again, but it seems fine
I
now.
think my mic wire is probably like destroyed, but
Could be all the
yeah.
okay.
Uh, yeah. I hope everyone could hear me. But okay. Uh, yeah. So, like I said, we're moving forward with to the next part of the edit, which would be the flower. But before we do that, let's just name this group. Let's just name it like hat edit. And making sure that same layer selected, we'll go ahead and make edits to the flower. And again, you want to go ahead and click the object selection tool on the left hand side toolbar here, clicking the actual flower until it gives us that that selection highlight. And then we'll go ahead and create group, and then making sure we click this mask button here. And you can see that super tiny, but you can see that the mask has been applied on the flower. So yeah, we'll do the same thing. We'll create this new adjustment layer. We'll go ahead and click solid color. I want to make the flower blue. Let's do actually, yeah, like a sky blue. And then we'll go ahead and add another adjustment layer. We'll do brightness and contrast. We'll need to place the color above the brightness and contrast. And while the color adjustment layer is selected, we'll go to the blending tool here, and then going over to where's color. Um, but again, because the color we selected is really like bright, we don't want it to have that weird, strange color effect. So we'll just change the opacity until it's just right. Yeah. You just want to make things look natural, unless your intention is to make it look really, spontaneous. But in this case, we're going to make it look natural. And then going over to the brightness and contrast adjustment layer, make sure you click, again, you got to click the sun icon. That will apply the changes that you've make. And we'll go to adjust the brightness a little bit. Maybe not too much, because it's already bright. And then like contrast a little bit maybe. Okay, cool. Can I do fill? Okay, no, that doesn't work. Yeah. And yeah, so once everything looks good, again, making sure that you've created, you rename the folder to its appropriate name. So let's name it flower edit. We can go ahead and go to file and then export as. And again, like I've mentioned before, just keeping all the settings the same. Unless you do want to change it to like some specific width and height. But you don't want to mess with these because by default this is what you were working on. So I would just keep everything the same. And yeah, you can even see a before and after. So if you click on the eye icon, it's before, this is after, it's before, this is after. And yeah, so that's just like a introduction on what you can do in terms of touching up existing photos and all that stuff. Yeah, and again, if you guys have any questions, yeah, now's the time to just ask us. But that kind of concludes the workshop. And yeah, I guess Victoria will.
Yeah, sure. Again, yeah, we have like 15 minutes left. So if
Mhm.
you have any questions, or it doesn't have to be like related to the tutorial, even like if you have just any general Photoshop questions, feel free to ask them. And then we have a few minutes for that, and then we can close up as well. So yeah, maybe I'll leave a few minutes in case someone wants to ask something, and then
Sure.
if there doesn't seem to be any, then I can like close this up. But yeah, feel free.
Yeah, I'll also, Victoria, they asked a good question. Will you provide the workshop video through email? Like everyone
Yeah,
has signed.
like
How would that work?
um basically I'm gonna post it to YouTube. So I'll
YouTube,
have
okay.
the link on there, and then I think I don't know if there's anything else you want me to share, James. Like I could also email them, and then maybe at the end of
Yeah.
the week I can just include it all in one email so you guys can see. I can include the link there. I can
Mhm,
include like these shortcuts. And then yeah, if you have any additional things, I can share
mhm.
that.
Um, yeah, let me just quickly address Dia's question here.
Yeah,
So
perfect.
if you're looking to, let me just double check. Yeah, so the group icon is just over here on the bottom right tool menu that you guys have. Why is my thinking like this? It's this icon here that looks like a folder. So whenever you click this, Photoshop will automatically create an empty new group. And then anything in that group, you can then make changes to. Like they're all linked within that group. So it's super useful um, if you're working with like a billion layers and you're just like, because trust me, you'll get to that point where you're just like trying to find what changes you made, and it's a lot useful to have them all in groups. Cool. Um, yeah. So in terms of, will you? Yeah. So Victor, I'm planning to just share with everyone some really good design resources for Photoshop. Um, just help everyone. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on that. Probably right after the workshop, I'll just send you all the links that I've been collecting for years.
Yeah, awesome.